So we have to recognize that the foundation also of the Israeli economy is founded on the special political and military role which Zionism fulfills for Western imperialism. While playing its role to ensure that the region is safe for oil companies, it has also carved out a niche market producing high-tech security essential for the day-to-day functioning of the new imperialism. Now, the unrestrained hand of US imperialism, and I'm sorry to disappoint people if they think Barack Obama is going to make a difference. And its support for barbarism, whether in Iraq or Palestine, should really hasten our actions. What Rosa Luxemburg talked about a long time ago is here. It's here. It's either barbarism or socialism. And I come from a Muslim community, but I can understand her analysis. Absolutely imperative for us to understand in order to make sense of what we see happening today. If we look at Afghanistan, if we look at Iraq, and how violence has been used, actually, to reconfigure the entire classes, the composition of classes, the actual decimation of whole classes, we can understand the importance of what she said. We also need to understand what Kama Nabulsi said after Annapolis. Kama is a Palestinian academic at Oxford, and she wrote, "The tarnished trickery of those tired catchphrases like last chance for peace, painful compromises, extremists against moderates, is now worn so thin a child would not be deceived. It is a meeting," referring to Annapolis, "to justify the status quo. There is an intense defeatism pervading the mainstream media and tired politicians without valor everywhere. But there is a hopeful reality. Many ordinary citizens all over the world, despite their monopoly on the mass media, the manipulations and the deceit, ordinary citizens have not given up, and the Palestinians have not given up on themselves." Now, the Palestinians, despite the atrocities, remain steadfast and courageous. And Palestinian organizations have told us, we heard them today, we heard Jamal and others, and they are asking us to support the BDS campaign. And this campaign, this strategy, its time has come. Someone in South Africa, Virginia Tilley, she's originally from the US, but she's been in South Africa for a long time, wrote after the cluster bombing of Lebanon, "It is finally time. After years of internal arguments, confusion, and dithering, the time has come for a fully fledged international boycott of Israel. Good cause for a boycott has, of course, been in place for decades, as a raft of initiatives already attest. But Israel's war crimes are now so shocking, its extremism so clear, the suffering so great, the UN so helpless," and this was written before the atrocities in Gaza, "and the international community's need to constrain Israel's behavior so urgent and compelling that the time for global action has matured. A coordinated movement of divestment, sanctions, and boycotts against Israel must convene to contain not only Israel's aggressive acts and crimes against humanitarian law, but also, as in South Africa, its founding racist logics that inspired and still drive the entire Palestinian issue. The logic of Zionism, once again, is here for us to see. Zionism is racism. This is not a cliche. This is shown again and again. And once again, we need to raise that point. If you read one of the newspapers, either the Independent or the Guardian, I'm not sure, there's a columnist who talked about how people are outraged throughout the world when they see babies being killed. But she writes that in fact, the Israeli right wing are impervious to this. Impervious, a human being we expect to be taken aback at least by this, to question their morality. But she quotes Golda Meir. And Golda Meir said that, look what the Palestinians are making us do. They are making us kill babies. It is their fault for making us kill babies. So this is the racist logic that we are confronted with. While situations are different from each other, the context is different. There are many parallels and there are lessons we can learn from the struggle in South Africa. The first lesson is that it took, contrary to what people might think, despite the blatant inhumanity of apartheid in South Africa, it took many decades, in fact, to build a strong boycott campaign. Lots of hard work of ordinary citizens. Many of you can speak to that here in Edinburgh as well. And despite the impression of many governments and unions and faith-based groups and multilateral organizations that right from the beginning they were anti-apartheid, they did not support apartheid, they supported the boycott. That is not true. That is not true. Dick Cheney, for example, when he was a senator, the vice president, thankfully not for much longer, he was the guy who, during the South African anti-apartheid struggle, called for the continued incarceration of Nelson Mandela because he was a terrorist. This is what he said. Both Reagan and Thatcher gave support to apartheid South Africa. Multilateral organizations and unions were hesitant for many years to fully support the anti-apartheid struggle. And the anti-apartheid movement was formed in 1959. And the first significant breakthrough came in 1963 when Danish dock workers refused to offload South African goods. And of course, later on, Liverpool dock workers, etc., etc. But look at the time span from 1959 to our elections in 1994, the first democratic elections. So that's the first point I want to make.